Through the Gates is produced under the support of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. That's our mission. We're engaged in fighting at every level so that wildlife management remains science-based and conservation continues to work for our wildlife. To learn more and join the movement, visit SaveTheHuntColorado.com. The North American model of wildlife conservation is the greatest conservation model in the world. It's a success story that should be shared and celebrated because everybody is a part of it. We got another episode of Through the Gates. I've been doing a lot of meetings going around the state and dealing with a lot of different subject matter. We're fortunate enough to have some guests that we've been meeting with over the course of the last, probably 3 or 4 months. And I'd like to introduce Veronica, and you are with CSU. So give me a little bit of background of who you are and what you do and kind of how we ended up getting together.
So I'm Veronica Yovovich. I wear a bunch of different hats. The one that I'm wearing today here for this meeting is CSU Extension. So I'm a human wildlife conflict extension specialist, which means for me that I primarily work with livestock producers to help keep their livestock from getting eaten by carnivores or injured by carnivores. And so here in Colorado, the thing that's taking up all the oxygen right now is wolves. And so I work with primarily beef producers, some sheep folks, to keep their livestock from getting killed by wolves.
And so how long have you been doing this sort of work?
I've been a wildlife biologist for probably about 20 years and working on conflict-focused issues for probably 15.
And mostly around the Western United States?
Mm-hmm.
How many states have you worked in?
I've worked in Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, Arizona, New Mexico, Oregon, and California.
And you've been how long with CSU?
CSU, I've been working here for about 2.5 years.
And you came here specifically because of the wolf deal?
I think that's probably why my position was created. It's a new position. So I have a joint appointment where I'm campus-based at CSU and have a traditional sort of research faculty appointment there. And then 50% of my job is extension. So that particular position, I think, was probably created looking down the road a little bit and seeing what kind of help they thought livestock producers were going to need in Colorado.
So you actually get out on the ground with individual producers or administrators or managers or whatever.
Yeah. So Extension has county level folks that work across the state, and then they have specialists who are based on campus. And so for my job, I get to work directly with producers, like you're saying, and with other extension faculty and land managers and agency folks to try and get a sense of what's happening across the state and generate research questions where we can pull in campus-based resources to address the issues that are happening across the state and also bring that back to relevant communities to make sure that the research that we're doing, the information that we're generating is relevant for local communities and really helps local producers.
Did you do the same type of work in other states too?
Yeah, so I came out here from California most recently, where I was acting in an extension role there, working at a smaller scale, more of the county level scale, working more directly with producers, listening to the community, listening to what they want, what would be helpful for science to help inform,
Mm-hmm.
and then generating research questions to address those emerging needs, and then building extension programming to get that information back out to the same producers. So working with communities to develop like research and extension programs.
But it's not just on wolves. I mean, it might be on a variety of different things in other states.
Yeah, in California, it was mostly mountain lion focused.
Really?
Mountain lions and coyotes, yeah.
And then have you got into like grizzly bears and black bears too?
Not yet.
No.
But we'll see. We'll see if there's space for that in what I'm doing now. You know, wolves are taking up a lot of room, but I think, you know, Colorado has some areas where I think some help could be useful for bears.
So when this job came open, did you think that it was something that would kind of go in alignment with what you'd already done in your career, or did you think it'd be a little bit more challenging just because of the way things have played out here?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure. I guess I thought it would be relatively similar. I think there's some of the dynamics that are really portable across states and communities. I think in places where you're trying to figure out ways to protect livestock and the carnivores are also protected, it shapes the tools that you can use to intervene, right? And how people feel about those tools. And some of those are very similar to the community that I work with, that I continue to work with in California, and what's going on here.
So when you got on board, were you allowed to kind of hit the ground running, or this program was actually just in its infancy stages? And so what you might have learned in other places maybe hadn't actually taken place here yet. Do you see challenges to turn around and try to make this a better, even flowing, upright manner just because of the way things have kind of played out and, you getting dumped into it, so to speak? You see things differently, excuse me, than what you maybe would have seen from where you came from before?
So the best thing you can do when you come into a new community is find out what that community wants, right? I've got years of experience in other systems with other producers, but and that can be helpful. But it makes the most sense to listen to the folks locally and say, like, okay, what is it that you see as outstanding needs? What do you want? And so I think that's something that I learned that I definitely brought with me from my previous experience is understanding that process for how you get yourself up to speed. And so you can hit the ground running as much as possible.
And Colorado's unique anyway because of the way that Proposition 114 was enacted. It was a voter-driven initiative. No other state's done that.
Yeah.
First time in the history of the world, I believe, that voters have turned around and said, yeah, we want to do something like this, but then not really have a plan of action in place that then an agency has to deal with, and the state has to deal with, and the ranchers and so forth have to deal with. I mean,
yeah, it's a very different setup.
Yes, very different than what you've had to deal with in the past.
Yeah, and one of the questions that I've had coming into this, from as an outsider, from another area, is how much conversation there is happening around the fact that it was a ballot measure, meaning that there's a lot more focus than if wolves recolonized by themselves. I'm curious about whether people are talking about all the resources that have been really explicitly designed to support ranchers because it is that focused reintroduction that weren't there when it was just a few wolves trickling in from Wyoming.
Right.
So like right now we have more people, I'm pretty sure we have more people who have been hired to help ranchers deal with wolves returning than there are currently wolves in the state, which is, it's an exciting place to be in that way. Like there's a lot of attention on this that I think is really important to help get ranchers the resources that they need.
But there's a lot of unknowns, a tremendous amount of unknowns.
Yeah.
Nobody really knows, and I don't want to throw CPW out with the bathwater, but nobody really knows what they need to do at the next steps because they don't really know what's going to happen because they're still trying to implement the plan. And I've interviewed people that have had wolf depredation issues and claims that have been paid. But at the same time, there's other people sitting on the periphery that maybe they're worried about wolves coming into their neck of the woods, or they haven't had to deal with wolves, but their neighbor has had to deal with them, or maybe it's a completely different subsection of the state. If you had the opportunity to talk to people preemptively, proactively, would it change your philosophy on how to get their input and find out how they would like you to, have engagement?
I think it would change the tenor of the conversations, not necessarily the content, right? So if you can come in before things have gone sideways, you're going to talk about things very differently than after when emotions are really heightened.
Kind of like an insurance plan. It's, when you know what you're getting before you need it, it makes it a lot easier to turn around and figure out what you do when you actually need it.
Yeah, the uncertainty is really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So how many hours a week do you spend on this?
Oh, this is everything. This is my full-time job. It's all conflict all the time.
Is it? And have the people that you've interacted with on the landscape, the actual producers themselves and wolf proponents, have they all been pretty well established in their ways and willing to adapt for the conversation and easy to communicate with?
I've been really impressed with how ranchers are showing up. So we held a series of meetings, we being Colorado Parks and Wildlife Services, Colorado Department of Ag, and Extension. And we went to different communities to make sure to get the word out about different resources, different new programs, different new funding streams, introduce them to the staff that are administrating those programs, and make those connections. And when we went through those, I think we had 10 or 11 different programs, and we had over 350 ranchers show up, their own time, coming to these meetings, showing up, and emotions may have been heightened, but they were there, being constructive, thinking about what they could do, asking good questions, coming up with some really creative solutions. And that's something that I really wish the media was talking about more, because we hear a lot about the loud voices
Exactly.
that are objecting, but we're not hearing about all those people who are doing really great things and showing up and really putting their back into it.
There's a intricate web of this whole process because of the original stakeholder engagement, the facilitation of the plan, trying to implement the plan, trying to make sure that everybody was on board with things, trying to figure out where they were going to get wolves, how they're going to dump wolves, what they're going to do to follow up with wolves, and then provide a level of communication. What part of the conduit does CSU or you guys play into that? And is it like in the middle stages, beginning, or is it all just all the way straight across the board?
Conduit, that's it exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So our job, we have as Extension, as CSU faculty, we have no management responsibilities, power, objectives. Our entire job is to be useful and to try and link people with resources, generate resources where there are gaps, help agencies figure out what information they need, what programming they need to reach the stakeholders that they're looking to reach. So we're kind of, in an ideal world, we're threaded throughout. We're creating a web or network at every phase of the process, connecting all sorts of different parts.
How many people are in your specific department?
Do you mean like my faculty department? So the department that I'm a part of at CSU is Fish, Wildlife, and Conservation Biology. I think there are probably like 25 faculty members, and those faculty do all sorts of different things. I'm the only extension faculty in my department. Folks study everything from fish to frogs to carnivores, deer, you name it. We've got wildlife biologists in that department studying it. But I get to kind of straddle that group and Extension, where we've got, I'm not sure, I think it's something like 56 different Extension offices across the state.
Out of 64 counties, I mean, you're spread all over the place.
Yeah. There's some presence across the entire state. You know, some have more agents, Extension agents, than others. Some it's pretty small.
Are you the only one in the entire state that's got your specific title?
Yeah.
So you're the person in charge of all of it.
I'm in charge of me.
So how many times a month are you in the field, so to speak? I mean, I consider this to be in the field because you're not in the office.
It depends. It totally. I imagine like your work.
It takes you all over.
It does, and different months look different, different weeks look different.
And so you're trying to engage at the leadership level as far as administration and conversation. And there again, I use that word conduit because I think a lot of these entities and individuals have become conduits. And so if you had your druthers, would you rather stay in Fort Collins in the office and do all your work?
No, this is what I'm here for.
Yeah.
No, this is absolutely a really important part of my job. And I feel grateful that I get to be a part of a lot of these different conversations where some of the players are the same. And so we can bring content from one conversation into another and perspectives that we're hearing. But there are a lot where other people don't get to be in the same rooms that I do. And so it's a part of my job is trying to authentically represent the perspectives that I'm hearing. And make
Which is
sure,
a variety of different ones depending on the circumstances.
Right. Yeah. And translate that into how other groups can turn that into action to support those different perspectives.
So you've been here, what, 2.5 years, you said?
I've been here in Colorado. I started the job 2.5 years ago, but I moved here 2 years ago.
And since then, have you seen a change in philosophy or perspective of proponents of wolf introduction and supposed opponents that are having to deal with things as they move forward? They still might be proponents now, but has there been a change in philosophy as things have gone on over the last 2 years from your perspective?
I'm not sure if I've seen a change or if I'm just learning and being introduced or getting familiar with more and more groups. I'm not sure that I've been here long enough with the same group to really say one way or another. I think, this goes back to what I was saying earlier, that if you read about this in the media, it's very different from what I'm experiencing on the ground.
Yeah, it's a soundbite.
Yeah,
You read a half a page article, and there's 3 clips in there that might resonate with somebody, but it's not the full statement. It's not the full context. If you see something on Channel 9 News, it's typically a 38-second spot, and they take a little bit of somebody and a little bit of somebody else, but it's not really the whole story. It's kind of like the trailer to a story.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Right, exactly. And I'm getting to see more and more of that whole story, and the whole story is much more encouraging. Like, there are a lot of ranchers that are really trying to use different tools. They're trying to use the different programs that are at the same time being created, and thinking in new ways.
And a lot of the conversations that you and I've been part of the last couple of days has led to experiences of other individuals, but also perceptions of what other individuals are experiencing. They might have had a chance to turn around and convey that message appropriately, or maybe they didn't get a chance to get on a hot mic long enough. But do you see a little bit of a change where they're a little bit more receptive to having a legitimate, amicable conversation with other individuals that maybe a year or 2 years ago, they were a little bit more hard-lined, a little bit more solid in their opposition to something? Do you see some of that start to come around a little bit?
I think so. I think we're starting to see some lines on the map. People are starting to understand a little bit more about, okay, we do have some wolves here. We're seeing that the majority of the wolves are behaving in ways that most people are finding relatively acceptable, and are getting comfort in that, right? And getting some experience and recognizing that, like, okay, this isn't as bad as we thought it would be, and kind of relaxing into that a little bit.
And some of it's got to be, and this is my perception, and because I sat on the stakeholder advisory group, and what I do for a living with a wildlife conflict resolution specialist, or whatever the hell anybody wants to call me. It's a wildlife control operator. But if you look at the way people are having to deal with things on a different day-to-day basis, somebody that has to deal with it now that they didn't have to before has a different perspective, because there was always the guy across the street.
Right. People are in different arcs of getting familiar with these things. And so depending on which community you're in a different phase of it being a little bit more old hat, or a little bit more familiar to communities that have it about to come down the line.
Yeah, and as we discussed at many levels, and it's been obvious based upon the last 7 months of interactions, like in the Carbondale, Copper Creek area, or the former Copper Creek Pack, now in Capitol Creek, those things have created more attention. Other places in the state, the wolves have not drawn near as much attention. That's probably good, but there's been mountain lions and bears in other parts of the state that have drawn attention. So somebody on the Front Range that maybe had an interaction with a bear or mountain lion maybe can probably understand a little bit more what it has to deal with a conflict or conflict resolution. Somebody that has bears and lions around their property but's never had that problem or that interaction with a specific species, it would be hard for them to understand what the other guy's talking about until they show up in their trash dumpster or in their backyard or in their hot tub or ripping their car apart trying to get in. And I think that when it gets into the wolf conversations, there's this unknown that so many people don't know if they're going to have to deal with it. And they're also seeing in the news almost on a daily basis that somebody else has had to deal with it. And whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, some of those things have come back to probably help other people, but also maybe not help them as much as what they thought they were going to get help in the first place.
Yeah, and one of my hopes in all this is we know that Colorado has a really healthy mountain lion population, really healthy bear population, coyotes, and all of those species impact livestock. And so my hope in this is that all the attention that's going into protecting livestock against wolf predation will also collaterally protect them against these other forms of predation too, and help ranchers in multiple ways, not just with wolves.
If you want to support a company that supported the efforts to defeat Proposition 127, then you need to support Davis Tent. Davis Tent has provided quality canvas goods for outdoorsmen for the last 50 plus years. For more information, go to davistent.com. If you want to support another business that was instrumental in helping us defeat Proposition 127, check out Salida Gun Shop. Salida Gun Shop in Salida, Colorado provides quality products, expertise, and knowledge from individuals that actually do what they sell. Go to salidagunshop.com. Listen to the advice of Cameron Haynes and support companies that are supporting your cause and your efforts. Minturn Anglers is one of those companies. Minturn Anglers provides product and fishing excursions in Colorado and are second to none. For more information, go to minturnanglers.com. You and I spoke briefly yesterday, or last evening, and the majority of stuff you do is agriculturally related. Mm-hmm. It's production related. But there's a crossover, especially in Colorado, because of the public wildlife interaction, the interface there, that's not agriculture. And so you don't really get into the specifics like what we talked about on skunks and raccoons and geese and so forth. I mean, problem or nuisance animals when it comes into that. But that's a big component of public perception as well. And I think that people understanding that if they had this problem in their backyard, what would they want done with it, or how would they turn around and address it? And I always try to get people to put the shoe on the other foot, because as I explained when we had our conversations before, everybody has a level of tolerance, and it's easy to turn around and point the finger at somebody else when they're having to deal with it because I would handle it differently. But if it's not in your backyard, or not in your herd of cattle, or not in your chicken coop, it's kind of hard to say what you would do until it happens to you. Do you see that the agriculture community kind of thinks the same way on that line when it comes to bears, lions, and wolves, that, well, it's not in my backyard, so I don't have to worry about it?
I think it is within like the agriculture community. I think it is in a lot of people's backyards. Mm-hmm. I think something that I have heard a lot of is that folks living in Western Colorado are misunderstood by folks on the Front Range, and that folks on the Front Range don't understand the importance of working landscapes. They don't understand how to recreate alongside cattle, how to interact with cattle and livestock guardian dogs and gates and other tools, and that there's a growing disconnect between those communities and appreciating the value that public lands grazing plays in maintaining open spaces that Front Range folks really appreciate. And they, a lot of people live in Colorado so that they have access to those expansive lands, and that people don't understand how we maintain those open spaces. In the conversations you've had, are you primarily dealing with, I would say, wolf proponents or advocates, and then the agricultural producers as well? Is that the two sectors that you Mostly I work with livestock producers. Okay. Have you had a chance to talk to anybody in the general public, or has that not been part of the scheme of things? It's a growing part of what I'm doing. So in understanding more like what ranchers want, what West Slope folks are looking for from Extension or resources that they could use, one of the things that we've heard is we need to get the word out to Front Range folks to help them understand, how to deal with our cows and gates and whatnot. And so we're developing some programming to deploy along the Front Range to teach people about wolves, the impacts that they have, mm-hmm. and also public lands grazing and the value that plays. So that's a gateway into working with that community more. But most of who I work with is and you're a single person, so it's not like you're going to be able to talk to 5.9 million people. Right. So the idea is to create a program that we can kind of send off with other folks who are interested in working with those groups. Because I'm just one person, and so I've got wonderful partners in this to help get that going. So, based upon where we're at in not only this process, that
where you and I were introduced. As things continually move forward, you're working with or through Colorado Parks and Wildlife, some with the Colorado Department of Agriculture, Wildlife Services, as you mentioned. Name some of the other groups that you're working with.
Those are my big ones. Yeah.
And then what about on the private sector? Any specific agriculture groups or any other sort of alliances or coalitions that you're working with?
WLA, a bit, but those are you've hit the main partners that I have. Yeah, and then there's like local stock growers groups and whatnot that kind of fit into those. Well, actually, I guess they're separate from those.
Yeah. This is a growing adaptive process, and it's going to continue to do so. Proposition 114 was voted on in November of 2020. The stakeholder advisory group started in 22, went all the way through the latter part of midsummer of 23. We're still in the formulation of a lot of these things that, it's easy for armchair quarterbacks to sit on the sidelines and criticize the coach and the players and the owners for having the players on there. I use a lot of sports analogies because I think it's relevant on the day-to-day operation. But for the most part, are you seeing in the 2 years that you were here, since you've been here, a pretty good uphill trend that you're getting something accomplished? Or is it constantly just beating your head against the wall going, well, we're just going 3 steps forward and 5 steps back?
I mean, I think we're moving in the right direction. We've had some really nice kind of aha moments in multiple dimensions. So we had one where we being folks from, I think it was CPW, I think there was somebody from CDA and a couple other groups that went out to a ranch and stood on the edge of a cliff overlooking this rancher's grazing area. And the rancher said, how do I protect my cows in this or my cattle in this? And that was a nice moment where everybody's like, okay, this is really expensive. And then the flip side of that is we looked at like a hypothetical wolf track or like a wolf track in another state. I don't remember exactly what the movement data was, but we looked at a map of how far wolves can move in a day. And that was a really nice aha moment for the ranchers in the room to say, okay, I understand how expensive that is, and overlaying that with like thinking about parcels and how many different land ownerships the wolves are moving through that CPW is trying to deal with. And it was a really nice kind of aha for everybody in there to think like, okay, the spatial scale that everybody has to deal with is really big.
Yeah, when I was on the stakeholder group, I mean, you turn around and look and people would say, well, you just put flat area up where you're going to have your cows. Okay, well, I'm working on and work with landowners that have 5,000, 10,000, 30,000, 50,000, 80,000 acres.
Right.
And they have cows everywhere.
Right.
And so you're not going to put flat area on that. I mean, the state doesn't have enough to do a quarter of that, let alone.
Well, and it's not practical, right? And that's part of the reason that we value grazing on public lands is to maintain that land for the wildlife that live there as well, right? And so if you put up so many tools that you're influencing the wildlife too, not just the carnivores, what does that do to the conservation value of that land? I think that I have a feeling that virtual fencing might be a game changer in this. If we can concentrate the risk, and move them around the landscape appropriately so they're not putting undue grazing pressure in one area, that really helps you protect your resource too. And then something like a livestock guardian dog or a range rider is much more effective because they know where the cattle are.
Right. If you have an opportunity to think where you want to be 5 years from now, do you think you're still going to be trying to help solve these problems, or do you think you'll be moving on to other things because a lot of them solve themselves?
I would love to be in the latter camp, but since wolves are returning, I think the sort of hotspot areas are going to pace with the wolves as they move back in, and new communities need help kind of ramping up. I think you've hit part of it there that once there's sort of a critical mass of tools and people understanding how to use different approaches and experience out there, there's going to be a lot of sharing from community to community. That's the best way to transmit that information. And so there might be a little bit more space for me to work on something else. But I think wolves are still going to play a significant role in what I do.
And in your current capacity, you're dealing with wolves primarily, but have you gotten into the bear and the lion side here just because some of these ranchers, some of the producers were likely to have those interactions as well?
Yeah. People, the entire focus so far here has been on wolves. Yeah. Okay. I would be very happy to branch out. And as people ask for that, I'll diversify.
Because there's a lot of places, and because of my background and then knowing the people that I've worked with over the years, there's a lot of places that have historical damage or historical threats and depredation on bears and lions just because of where they graze or the allotments that they have. And while the wolves are probably, for the most part, going to be more transient, at least for a while, the bears and lions aren't necessarily as transient as what wolves will be. And so I would expect that somewhere down the road, you're going to have interactions with people to say, okay, we have lions in the spring and bears in the fall. And oh, look, we have wolves now in the summer or the winter. And just because of the transient population. Is the state prepared to turn around and deal with all three of those under the same conversation? Or do you think it's going to remain separate conversations for years to come?
I don't know. I'm not sure what the state's going to do. I do think that wolves tend to be a little bit of a different beast in this space. So they may get collapsed into other game damage programs, or they might continue to be separate. You asked about 5 years, maybe they'll be separate for 5 years, but then, in the future they'll get collapsed in. I'm not sure.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations for somebody right now that might be listening or watching this from a livestock producer, if they're hesitant or they're anxious about things that maybe they haven't had to deal with? What would you recommend for them to prepare and get ready for probably what is eventually the inevitable? Maybe it's not right away, but how do they prepare themselves in the best way possible?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that CPW is doing is site assessments on ranches. So they'll work with producers to figure out what kind of vulnerabilities they've got in their operation, and what kind of tools might be appropriate. And that helps connect you with your local CPW staff, open that conversation. They can share tools. They can share resources. Extension, I think, is also a really helpful resource. And talking to your local extension agent is a great move. But getting that site assessment on the books, taken care of, I think can be really useful.
And they can do that
anytime. Yeah, it can be proactive. CPW would prefer that it's proactive rather than after you've had an incident with wolves, or it can be retroactive, or after you've had an incident. But getting that under your belt would be a great first step.
And should they contact their district wildlife manager first, or go to the area wildlife manager, or just call CSU? Or
I think their DWM should be able to help them, or if they have another contact at CPW that they're more comfortable with, whatever avenue, they should be able to get funneled into the right place for that.
And there's plenty of resources out there for them to figure out what direction to go and how to get there.
Yeah, if you Google CPW and site assessment, that should get you to the right place.
Okay. Down the road, I think you and I are probably going to be working together on a couple of these things, but would you be open to further conversations, more maybe at length, a little bit more about you and your background and what you've seen in other states? And I think that these type of conversations not only help the general public synthesize a lot of the stuff that goes on that they don't know about, and figure out if there's other channels of communication that could be had, or other resources that they can look into. Because there's a lot of people that don't even raise product, that they're not producers, but are interested in this whole process, whether they were pro-wolf or anti-wolf, or just in the middle on wolves. And I think that a lot of these conversations could be elevated, just like what we had conversations before. Knowledge is power, but education is just as good as knowledge. And you can educate yourselves about a lot of different things for a lot of different reasons, with going in with an open mind. So I look forward to further conversations and working with you. Appreciate you taking a little bit of time. I know you're a little bit skeptical on this whole process when we started, but
I'm just a behind the scenes kind of person. That's all. It's nothing.
No, but that being said, there's a lot of people that don't know that things like what you do and the programs you're involved in actually exist. And we're going to have some other guests on over the course of the next several weeks that are kind of getting behind the scenes a little bit, just to where people don't think it's all related to the top levels of Colorado Parks and Wildlife, or all this doesn't come from the Department of Natural Resources or even higher in state government.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful to, even if you don't live anywhere near where the wolves are, but you're feeling anxious about it, to your point of figuring out ways to get a little bit more information to maybe tamp down some of that anxiety. Another resource that I should have mentioned is there's a website called Wolf Ready Colorado that has, it's sort of a one-stop shop for directing people to lots of different resources. So it has a list of different organizations and what kind of tools and funding and support they have to offer, information about different livestock protection tools, and links out to information that lives on other agencies' websites to help create one place where people can go, because it is really confusing. There's a lot of new resources, and even if you don't have to deal with wolves directly at this point, like you're saying, having a little bit of education is really empowering. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I anticipate we'll probably have another conversation or two as we continually work forward on stuff. And Veronica Yovovich.
Yeah.
So I got that right.
Yes, you did.
Colorado State University, and your title again is what?
Human Wildlife Conflict Specialist.
Okay.
I'm an CSU Extension.
Well, we appreciate you getting on Through the Gates. We're going to have a couple other guests on in the next several weeks and try to piggyback on a lot of these conversations. But we appreciate your time and look forward to working with you.
Me too. Thanks.
You bet. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Through the Gates. For more content like this, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe on all of our channels.